I put on eyebrows for y'all. I hope you appreciate it. I feel like I'm in one of those movies because my hair is just blowing. I have my fans right there, which you can probably hear. Hi everybody, this is Alisha Costanzo and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing a wrap up as well as my last week of the month where I didn't really have any extra reading prompts other than to keep reading what I wanted for Medievalathon. It's a lot. Okay, so I'm gonna try to be a good YouTuber, booktuber, book person, and actually talk about each of these books individually for once. Give you some stats, tell you how I matched up my reading prompts for Medievalathon and where I ended up with that. If you haven't been following me on Instagram, I've been talking about it, although a little bit delayed sometimes. Alright, so let's go through some stats before I go through the books. So I have a total of 19 books that I want to talk about today that at least are off my TBR. They're finished. I'm not going to go back to them, whether that means I DNF them or I actually finished reading them through. Alright, so of those 19 books, 10 of them were audiobooks, 8 of them were digital, and 1 was physical. So I got 1 book off my physical TBR, and if you didn't know, I have a lot of trouble reaching my actual physical TBR. They are buried behind snakes in my desk. It's very crowded in my office currently, and I have 2 boxes of books in my hallway and like 4 boxes of books in my husband's shed, and yeah, I can't get to them, so I'm reading a lot of library books. I am trying, however, to also get things off of my digital TBR, not my Goodreads one, but the ones I actually have downloaded onto my Kindle, because it's a lot, and I'm trying to not do it so much, but I keep BookBub keeps sending me emails every day with free books in them. So, yeah. Then sometimes I get on a binge and I go to the free book section and I just start downloading everything that looks good. Maybe I'll take you guys with me in one of those. Anyways, the audiobooks are dominating because I read while I cook, which is fantastic, and run and work out and all those things. My totals for the month. I listened to a total of 93 hours, 32 minutes, and 48 seconds of audiobooks, and that equates to 3.875 days that I was reading books. But if you times 3 by 31, which is the average amount of hours I cook a day, then that comes out to 93 hours. So it makes sense when you think about it like that. I'm not overly indulging myself and not doing other things. I am combining activities together, which, if you know me at all, I absolutely love when I can be productive and get 2 things done at the same time. Like, my life is crazy as it is, so if I can do that, more power to me and my life. We love this. Alright, so total pages read. Now, I'm going to give you 2 total. First is the number of pages for the books altogether, for all 16 that I actually finished. I didn't count any of the pages for the ones that I did not finish, and my total pages was 5,027 pages. Now, of those, 1,621 were pages that I actually read. The rest of them I listened to. So, to put that in perspective of how much I'm actually reading versus listening to people read to me. So again, let's talk about age range. Of the 2 age ranges, which I would call young adult or adult, most of my adult books are new adult, but 14 were young adult books, and 5 were adult books. Again, most likely new adult. Now I have a nonfiction in there, so let's talk about that. The genres that I mostly read in, I had 12 fantasy, I had 2 sci-fi or dystopia, I had 2 nonfiction, I had 2 romances, and I had 1 mystery. There are plenty of other genres in there, by the way, like I had a lot of historical and steampunk and paranormal and that type of thing, but they all kind of fit within those umbrellas, so I tried to pick the one that was mostly the main primary category of the books. So by year, I'm going to go from before 2010 up to 2019. I didn't read any books from 2020. So before 2010, I had 2 books, one of which was first published in 1956. Which was Night, if you have been following along. I read 1 from 2010, 2 from 2012, 5 from 2014, 2 from 2015, 3 from 2016, 2 from 2018, and 2 from 2019. Finally, here are my star ratings. You'll see I had, so let's start low. You'll see I DNF'd 3 books, 3 of which I've had on my Kindle for a long time. I gave 0 1 stars and 0 2 stars. Usually if they're going to be that low, I'm probably not going to finish the book. I have 4 3 stars, 7 4 stars, and 5 5 stars. I'm starting to wonder if I either already know what I'm going to enjoy, if I've been lucky. I've been giving a lot of 5 and 4s, or if I'm just trying not to be mean to other authors and editors and whatnot. But audio is also like lessening the blow that I give to stylistic issues that I have in books, so that might also be the reason for the inflated numbers. Just as a disclaimer, since I'm reading mostly audiobook, that might be the reason. So yeah. And I didn't know if this was an interesting fact or not, because I do have a lot of self-published books on my shelves, and I don't obviously have anything against self-published books because I self-publish my own stuff, and I run an independent press, which means that they're not traditionally published. Like, most of my stuff is not traditionally published. But I thought it was interesting because a lot of the few books that I get are self-published, what the ratio was, and 2 of my DNFs were self-published, and 1 of my 3 stars was self-published. And that one is interesting. We'll talk about her in a second. That's Aries. I don't know what to talk about. I did DNF 1 traditionally published book. Anyways, we'll talk about that a little bit when we get there if you haven't already seen the vlogs for that. Alright, so let's break down my Medievalathon characters, because I got 2. I technically could say I got 3, because I got 16 books for Medievalathon. I fit them all in prompt somehow. Alright, so let's talk about my first character, my first round. I'll put the picture up here. So first I've got Circe, which was C in the title, which means I got a cat. Then I read Aries, which is under 300 pages, and that got me this thief outfit. Then I read Blue Lily Lily Blue, and that had something pointy on the cover, which got me a sword. Then I read The Chess Queen Enigma, and that was a romance, or had romantic elements in it, and that got me an arrow. Then I read Rebel of the Sands, which had orange on the cover, and that got me a fox. And then I read White Cat, which was my highly anticipated read originally, and that got me a shield. And then finally I read Night by Elie Wiesel, which was yellowed, and that got me this dress. So there's my first character that I got. It took me the first 2 weeks to get through my first round, and so I decided to go again since Holly was offering us to have companions, so I went for another emperor after I became an empress. And so round 2, I read Waistcoats and Weaponry, which had my favorite color on the spine, which is teal or green, and that got me this female outfit with pants, which is really odd that that was the only one with a head. And I got Manners and Mutiny, which had something pointy on the cover again, so I got a sword for my emperor, or for my companion. Then I read The Raven King, and that was High Expectations, so I also got him a shield. And then I read Graduation Day, which was another romantic. One of the top 3 categories was romance, so I could count it, and I got another arrow for him, a bow and arrow. Excuse me. Then I watched The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer, and that was a scary read, so I got a chicken. Well, he got a chicken. We got a chicken. Then I read The Selection, and that was a buddy read, which I am only counting because Books and Lala was reading at the same time having a read-along, and so I'm considering that my buddy read. And that got me a puppy, a cute little golden retriever. And then I read The Queen of Nothing, which was shiny, and that got me this armor dress. And then I read 2 more books, so round 3, I got an extra little bit. I got an extra person to help us out. Maybe that can be the boy. And so I read Starflight, and that was a duology, the first in a duology, and so they got them double swords. And then I read Thorn of Glass, and that was a heavy book, and that got me an axe. So I read a lot of books. I got a lot of prompts. It was a lot of fun. I saved my people. Yes. Okay, so let's go through all of those books. I have moved a little bit, but the hair is still caught in the wind. We're feeling fabulous. You're ridiculous, Alisha. Alright, so now I would just like to talk about the books and just explain a little bit of what they were about, since a lot of these are not technically new releases, and people might not know what they are because I have a very weird reading style, I think, sometimes. Alright, so the first book that I read this month was Circe, and this is about the goddess Circe and her journey from when she's a child, a very unwanted child, who even when she raises her younger brother, he pushes her off and uses her just like everybody else does. It really pissed me off, and she gets banished, and we see her interact with all the other gods and their stories and Odysseus, and it was interesting. I liked seeing all of the myths in there. I really hated most of the characters most of the time, so it was really difficult for me to connect with the story and with Circe and with what was going on. But the language was beautiful. It was beautifully done, very, like, academically, very well incorporated all of those things, all of those classic elements in there. But I wish I had seen more of the other stuff, the stuff that was not on the page that she had to make up herself, and just kind of reference the other things so that we could see her. I don't know. The parts that I've already read about didn't interest me, so I wanted to see more invention of her story other than what we saw otherwise, which might just be my opinion, and that's fine. I ended up giving this a 3.5 because that enjoyment level was a 3. Academically, understanding the skill and how well she did putting this together made it a 4, so I halved it, merged them, averaged, and I got a 3.5 for Circe. And that, by the way, the author is Madeline Miller, so I get all that information in here somewhere. Alright, book number 2 is Aries by Gemma James. I had a lot of issues with this book, but I had a lot of praises for this book at the same time. And that's because this is a taboo, dark erotica story. I didn't know that it was going to be dark, which is why I had issues with it. I do not mind dark erotica. Like, that doesn't bother me at all. I am not typically a triggered person when it comes to content. I'm triggered when it comes to style all the time. But content-wise, there's some tropes that I don't like, but in general, I don't have qualms with certain vibes or tones or any of that being in a story, a certain scene, certain actions. Don't bother me. I was not expecting this to be so rapey. I just wasn't expecting it, so it, like, threw me for a loop. I'm hoping I did, in my TBR, reading the next one, as if it's a prompt, and it was only 99 cents. So we'll see how I feel about that then. But essentially what the story is about, if I can get there, is this princess, does it say her name? I don't remember her name. Is Princess Elise, I think it is, was an orphan. Her parents died and her uncle took over, and he signed a contract with the Zodiac Brotherhood, who are in control of a lot of things and very sexual beings. There's 12 rulers, and she was pretty much sold to them to be one of their queens, so she has to spend a month with each one of them, and then they compete for her hand. Well, she cannot refuse them, and automatically raped in the mouth. Even if she enjoys it at the end, it was still rape, because she said no. And just beatings. Like, spoiler, they ended up liking each other at the end, but it's very cringy throughout. I could read it only one chapter at a time, and it was only a 20,000 word story, so yeah. Okay, I gave this a 3, because I both loved her language and her ability to structure this in a way that made me actually want to read the next one, and the cringe. Yeah, okay. Hopefully it gets better in the next one. In Taurus, which is the next, which I'm starting today. Okay, so book number 3 is Blue Lily Lily Blue by Maggie Stiefvater, and this is the 3rd in the Raven cycle, in which they're traveling underground on a ley line to save as many people as they can in their group. Everybody seems to need something, everybody seems to be connected to it, and how outsiders are trying to thwart them and get in the way or steal their powers and that type of thing. So since it's 3rd in the book, I can't really say much about it other than those elements. Blue is the main girl character, and she's the daughter of psychics. She amplifies psychic powers and is connected to the ley line in that way. And of course Gansey, who didn't die because someone died on the ley line, who is deathly allergic to bees, and find out really, really early in the first book that he was found during a ceremony of who's going to die that year. So we go through the 4 books understanding that he's meant to die at some point, and that she's meant to kill, if she kisses her true love, he will die. Which is the end of the first chapter. She hooked me like that with it. And I listened to these on audiobook. Love the dude who read them. Can't think of his name right now, but he was one of the coaches in Remember the Titans. Love him. Patton, I know is the last name. I can't think of his first name though. And this was my first 5-star of the month. I love this series. I finished the series this month, so we'll get to talk about the Raven King here in a minute. But loved it. Love the books. Oh my gosh. Okay, so it's gonna take me a while. Book 4 is Queen of Nothing, which is the final in the Folk of Air series by Holly Black. I gave each one of these books 5 stars. It is just my jam. Again, I listen to them on audiobooks, so I don't know if there's any stylistic issues that I might have had with it reading it, but I was drawn in by the story and the characters and the hatred. She makes me hate so many people. It is ridiculous. But again, I gave this a 5-star. And if you don't know about Queen of Nothing, it is The Cruel Prince is the first one. And these girls are human living in essentially the fairy world, and people are really mean to them and try to take advantage of them all the time. And Jude, the main character that we're following, finds her way into taking control over fairy essentially. And the budding romance with her and, oh my god, why can't I think of his name? This is not okay. Carden. How could I forget Carden? I love Carden so much. Oh my gosh. Okay, and the funny thing is I've always kind of loved Carden even when he was an asshole. Because I knew it was coming. And these are the books that help me realize that I really love to hate, why do I keep saying that? Hate to love relationships, because the hatred and the love between those two is ridiculous. And that's not really spoilery at this point, I think. Anyways, book 3, everything I wanted it to be. Brilliant. Loved it. 5 stars. Holly Black is one of my new favorite authors, which is a very short list of people that I will go read any book that they publish. So that's what I'm working on with her. I'm trying to read all these. And Maggie Stiefvater too is. I need to test one other book by her. I've at least tested another book by Holly Black and loved it. So why don't I keep talking about books, because we'll get there. Alright, the next book I read was The Chess Queen Enigma by Colleen Gleason, and this is the 3rd in a series. You can tell I love series. I love a series. I only write in series, so love series. Anyways, this is the 3rd in the Stoker and Holmes series, which is a steampunk young adult world where we have the niece of Sherlock Holmes, Mina Holmes, and we have the younger sister of Bram Stoker, Evelyn Stoker, and these two become a team to fight some underground dark creatures and bad guys and vampires and the like under the tutelage of Miss Adler. And of course the Queen. And there's some time travel in these books because it is initiated in the Clockwork Scarab. This boy comes back from our time with his iPhone or smartphone, and in the museum that they investigate and they find him, and of course they have to keep the secret that he's from the future and electricity is illegal and all these things. So everything's steam powered and is a very interesting series. There's also a lot of triangles going on, which I love in young adult stuff when it's just angsty instead of like when it's too competitive, I guess, too sexual. I don't know. I love the vibe. I love the references, but I love how they're completely outside of the canon at the same time. They use a lot of canon things, but we're not seeing them rehash any Stoker or Holmes stories. So really liked it. I gave this a 4.5, which I think I've given the rest of the series too, and I'm trying to debate on whether or not to read the next book immediately, or if there's going to be or to wait a year. I've been reading one a year, which has given her a chance to publish some more books. So do I wait? I don't know. Let me know what you think. Should I wait? I don't know. Book number 6 is Rebel of the Sands. It's Rebel of the Sands, and this is by Elwyn Hamilton. I hope I said her name right. This is about a young woman who is doing whatever she can to flee her homeland, which is in the poorest of the poorest neighborhoods, poorest towns that mines metals and manufactures guns and ammo. It's pretty much a very oppressive towards women. Women are owned and stoned to death and raped and killed and have no rights and all these things. So that type of vibe. The Sultan is killing off magic the best he can. There's djinn and magical beasts in the sands and a lot of political intrigue, but this young woman, Amani, is different. She's got blue eyes where everybody else is dark, and she is a great shot. So she learned to shoot when she was young because that's what she grew up around, and she goes to a contest to try to win enough money to run away because her uncle was talking about marrying her because her parents are dead. And as she runs, she meets the foreigner, and they go back and forth between this kind of hate and love too. They're obviously attracted to each other, and there's a romance that's built there, but there's a lot of secrets and a lot of lies, and they're trying to find the prince, the rogue prince essentially, who has to find a way to rebel against his father and the absolute dictator police state that is happening in this book. And I enjoyed it quite a bit. I originally tried to read Land of Dust for the prompt that this was, which was of course Desert-a-thon and Medieval-a-thon, and I ended up DNFing it. We'll get there. So anyways, I gave this one 4.5 stars too. It was a good read. I would recommend it. So my 7th book, so many more to go, White Cat by Holly Black. And this is set in a world where the witch's magic comes through their hands and through touch, and this young man who we're following doesn't believe that he's got any magic, but he sleepwalks, so he's the only one in his family, much like in the Raven cycle, who doesn't have a power. He thinks he doesn't have a power. It's very immersive. We are seeing him go through figuring out that he does actually have power, and it's an enormous one, and his family's taking advantage of him. And there's murder, intrigue, and mob bosses, and they're called curse workers. And this is another instance where Holly Black made me hate people. I hate his family so much. They anger me because they're selfish, and the reason why curse workers are being persecuted. So I like that the main character seems to be the good guy, and I always enjoy that when a main character or protagonist has to unearth themselves from negative family. I don't like seeing it from like a third party where somebody else is being influenced by a family even though the other guy wants to fight his way out. I like seeing the actual immersion of them being within the family and trying to fight their way out. That's a more interesting story to me than that third party recognition of that story. And I'm mentioning this because we'll talk about it in another book. So anyways, I gave this 4.5. It wasn't a 5-star, but it's still a pretty darn good read, and I don't know if that is because of who read it or not. There's an audiobook, and it already gave me some preconceived ideas of the character, but I was surprised enough. I predicted half of it and didn't predict the other half, which made me happy. I like it when something can surprise me, so 4.5 is definitely a good rating. It makes Holly Black. I'm gonna have to read all of her things. So book number 8 is The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater. This is just the 4th installment in which she could have broken my heart and she didn't, so thank you. But it did end as I predicted it to end, which made me happy, although other things happened in the book that I was not prepared for. I, again, don't know really anything about the actual style of the writing because I was listening to it. I only had one qualm, and that was with needing a little bit more internalization from Adam at times about some of the things that happened, some of the spoilery things that happened. But other than that, Ronan's still my favorite, by the way. I love him so much. I love that type of character. I gave this 5 stars. The whole series got 5 stars for me. I'm gonna have to check out more of her books. Then I read Waistcoats and Weaponry by Gail Kelliker. Now, I started her series this year, and well, let's talk about this one and Manners and Mutiny together, because you know what? That's just gonna be easier. So these two are the last 2 books in the Finishing School series, at least within Safrina's point of view. That's what I'm guessing. I loved the development of the triangle. I love who she picked at the end. I loved the werewolves and the vampires and the steampunky things and the dangerous airship that they had this finishing school on, and totally was happy that what I thought about the headmaster was true. I had a feeling. I love that it was true because she was brilliant. Oh my god, but I did not see the cakes coming. We'll just put it that way. I did not see the cakes coming. It made me so happy. Okay. Obviously, totally into this series, totally loved it. Gonna try to find more of Gail Kelliker. I have something of hers on my wish list for maybe next month because I don't think I fit her in this month, and she might be one of my new favorite authors as well, so I might have found 3 new favorite authors, and that makes me excited. I gave this one a 4.5. I gave the whole series a 4.5 because they were awesome. I did read some of them on audiobook and some of them on ebook, and I did have a few issues with style in general or dialogue tags, which I can hear in the audiobook. That bothers me. But yeah, awesome. Definitely would recommend. So I also read Night by Elie Wiesel, and this is something that's been on my TBR since I was in 10th grade, so 20 years ago. I'm glad I finally read it. If you don't know what Night is by now, it is a nonfiction book about Ellie's time during World War II, when he got sent to concentration camps and losing his entire family, and the type of torment that they went through, and his kind of losing his faith in God and having to combat those ideas of self and family and God and relationships during times when survival is really the only thing that you can think about. It's a very beautiful, beautiful story. I gave it 5 stars. I didn't anticipate liking it. I was actually really afraid that I wouldn't like it because I don't like classics. I don't like a lot of the things that people have tried to get me to read in school. So that's why it took me so long. And honestly, if I hadn't been 35 when I read this, I probably wouldn't have gotten it quite the way that I did now the first time. So 5 stars. Brilliant. If you haven't read it, you should. Totally understand why it's taught. Okay. My next book is Graduation Day, and this is the third in a series again. Finally finishing up the testing series by Joelle. How do you say her name? Charbonneau? I'm probably completely butchering her name, and I'm sorry for that. I really love the first in the series. So let me explain a little bit about what happened in book 1, because I can't really talk about what's happening in book 3 too much without giving too much away. So students essentially are young people, and our main character, she again lives out in that most poor part of these so it's kind of like the Hunger Games, where they're all in districts or little cities, and they're trying to revitalize the world because there's these 7 stages of war that happened, in which completely demolished most life and government and all these things. And in this new government, they are accepting people to go to testing so they can go to university, so they can make a difference and help progress the society and grow their technology and their ability to save their planet and be able to exist on it. The testing is a horrific test in which people frequently die during the tests, and it is assumed that people who don't die during the test but don't pass are also executed. There are some reveals in book 3 that put that into perspective, which is really interesting. I was a little bit surprised by that. I really loved the first book. Probably gave it a 4.5, or would now, thinking back on it. It was an interesting new take on a dystopia, and I love dystopians, so I love to teach dystopic stuff because I like satire. And book 2 disappointed me a little bit because I was able to call some of those things and was like, Book 3 also was able to call some of those things, so I gave it a 3.5. There were enough surprises that I enjoyed it. I mean, I still enjoyed it anyways, even though I could predict some of the things. But those tried and true tropes were a little bit too... There wasn't enough originality in them for me to go, wow, you really took that and flipped it on its head. So, which is what I enjoy that people do with tropes, is they make them original. That's why they work so well, is because they're adaptable. Anyways, 3.5. Would still recommend the series. I did enjoy it. If you like dystopias, you'll probably like it. At least the first book. Try the first book. I'm super glad that I read the first one. So, next book, we're getting there, is The Selection. Who wrote The Selection? Kira Cass. I am way behind, apparently, on this, and I'm a 35-year-old woman, so it makes sense that I probably haven't read this before, because I was in graduate school I think when this came out. So this is another kind of dystopic romance where girls are collected from the people to go try to win the hand of the prince, and this girl is close to the lowest, but she's not the lowest. She's in love with somebody who is the lowest, and there's this fight before he kind of forces her to sign up. So does her mom, and she doesn't think she's gonna get picked, and then she gets picked, and she tells off the prince, and all these things happen where it's pretty much... Obviously, he's going to fall in love with her. She's the main character. There's obviously going to be triangle stuff and a lot of competition between the girl. So it's very much what I thought it was going to be. I still enjoy the voice. I enjoyed the story. I was ranting and raving about the triangle bits because I did not like how that happened at all. But I'm sure if I were a teenager, I would love it. So I give this what did I give this, a 4? It was well done. I have to give credit to the fact that this is 2012, so it was 8 years ago before a lot of these types of things already had been happening, and I already had experience with it. So definitely going to keep reading. All right, next is The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer, and this is another nonfiction. I loved the audiobook of it because not only did she narrate, she read it, but she also played music during it. That just helped all the more. There was such So if you don't know, she has a TED Talk, and I will link it down below. You should absolutely check out the TED Talk. If you can't listen to the book, get it from your library or something. It's worth listening to and reading. It even made me enjoy her music and understand her music a bit more. But Amanda Palmer is a musician. She's very open about the fact that she trusts her fan base, and that when she asks for something, they give it to her. And when they ask for something from her, she does her best to give back. And she has a real connection with her fans, and how she kind of counters what a lot of us think of business, or did when social media first started, because this was like the start of Twitter when she started doing these things. So it's been a while, and it goes through her process of her career. It also talks about her romantic relationships until she found Neil Gaiman, and then their relationship together, which was I love the way she balanced this in it, and she made me absolutely love Neil Gaiman too, as an individual, which, I mean, I didn't know anything about him, so I loved his Sandman series. I had to read that in college. Tomato, schedule, banana. If you read it or you listen to it, you will absolutely understand what I'm saying. Those are pretty much like code for I love you between the two of them, and it was so well done, the way she interspersed that in their stories together. It's a really good read. I gave it 5 stars. She made me cry several times during it. She did a great job putting that together. I definitely recommend. Next is Starflight, and that, I believe, is Melissa Landers. Yes, I remembered. And this is a duology about a group of young people. So initially we start off with Solara, and she's trying to get passage to the outer realm because she was an orphan, and then she became a felon, and she's a really smart felon, but she's still got the tattoos of her crimes marked on her hands, and the only place she can find work is in the outer realm. But she has to find a way to get there, which means enslaving herself to somebody on the ship for passage, which happens to be the guy she absolutely hates, and he hates her, hates love, and she won the award that has his name, his father's award. She beat him out for it, and so there's this big animosity between who's smarter, who's better, he's rich, she's poor, entitlement versus having to fight for everything. Plus he was taken advantage of. There's and then they actually learn about each other and save each other because they're the only ones who can trust each other, and so it becomes this really cute romance. Absolutely loved it. Wished Lara had punched the princess in the face. If you read it, you'll understand. I'm trying not to spoil anything about what happens there, but she deserved to be punched in the face. If I were Lara, I would have done it. So it was a really cute romance. nothing too surprising for me, so it was just a regular YA romance for me with some sci-fi elements and some cool things. Very piratey, very Firefly siren-y. There was one point where I had to turn off the audiobook and just fume for a second because she did something really stupid, but she's young, of course she's gonna do something stupid. And yeah, it was good. I gave this a 4.25. I really feel like I'm cheating with the 2.5, so I really should round this down to a 4, but I enjoyed it enough to give it a little bit extra. So definitely liked it. So the next book that I finished was Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. And a lot of people talk about her. She's wildly popular. This is the first time I've ever read one of her books. Story-wise, I enjoyed quite a bit of this. I liked the characters. I liked the tests that she was put through. I liked her frustrations. I even kind of liked the triangle-y bits. It was very obvious that a triangle was being formed here because they even talked to each other about it, which made me kind of you're forcing it a little bit. Most of my qualms with the book are not story, although I absolutely found that I hate the trope of the absolute evil king. Hate it. Wish I never read anything else with it, although I might read Booktube. It is by far my least favorite trope, which is probably why I don't like high fantasy very often. Selena, I think is her name. Very weird names too, which was part of my issues with the book. Is the world-renowned assassin. She's an 18-year-old female blonde girl, and she's in a death camp essentially, and gets saved by the prince and put into a competition to be the king's champion. She's very, very afraid of the king, and there's these magical elements that the king has suppressed or killed. Notice that this resembles Rebels of the Sand, and it's about her creating connections and finding friends and being friends with her guard and the prince, their relationship, and a new princess, and somebody of course is opposing her because she wants the prince and the crown and things. There's a few surprises which I was grateful for, but the style. As an editor, I am very disappointed in whoever edited this. It was hard to read. All of the 5 or 6 beats of dialogue intermixed with things happening, the pronoun confusion, the telling, the saying what didn't happen, the dialogue tag. You want to talk about triggering somebody? My triggers are style. As an editor, it's completely triggered the entire time, hating the way that this was written a lot of the time. A lot of the characters, if I could have gotten my hands on it. which means I ended up giving this like a 3.25 because I did like the character so much. Even the cliched trite parts. I liked the style, man, the writing. And I know this is her debut, which is why I'm like, alright, I'll try the next one. I don't know if I'm going to be a Sarah J Maas fan, but I'll give it another try. Alright, so let's talk about the last 3 books, all of which I DNF'd. The first one is Born of Water by A.L. Noor. This has been on my TBR for a long time. I got it free book. I actually have the whole series, and the covers are beautiful. The description was awesome. The writing was terrible. I'm sorry. It was almost all telling. It was all info dumpy stuff. The only thing I found interesting all was her mother and her mother's job. Her best friends were cliched and flat, and she's kind of cliched and flat, and by the end of chapter 2 I was not interested. I knew it was not going to be my thing. So for people who like that type of stuff doesn't really bother, I'm sure it got better. I'm sure that there's an actual story in there somewhere that people would enjoy. I just was not. It reminded me of fan fiction I wrote when I was 12. So I DNF'd it after 2 chapters. It's off my TBR. I no longer have to worry about trying to finish it. The next one was Captivate. I don't remember who this is by. Vanessa Garden, part of the Submerged Sun series. I got farther in this one. I got 11 chapters, and then I skimmed through another 7 before I know that there's a lot of setup needed, but I had the same issue that I had with both Born of Water, which was there's way too much info dumpy stuff in dialogue and long descriptions of things that I just... The first chapter was good, intrigued me, but then it became this rather cliche, captive, kingdom, victim, guard, very much like the Throne of Glass, and I didn't care about the characters. I couldn't. The one interesting thing that they had in which her friend drowned and he might be down there with her under the water in this underwater world. I skimmed to see if it was actually him and it wasn't, so I was like, done. I'm just not interested. It wasn't interesting enough. The character wasn't interesting enough. Having something new happen to her was not interesting enough. I didn't like how whiny everybody was. That was my big problem, is everybody sounded like the same person. And they're definitely not. And the one person who was not like everybody else was a complete asshole, and I didn't like her. So, yeah, I DNF'd it after 18 chapters. And finally, Lands of Dust by John Triptych. And this was about a kingdom. Like, the first chapter is this man trying to get this boy, to run away with him, like kind of stole him because he's important to something about the kingdom and their plans. There are beasts hidden in the sand. In the first chapter, guards get swallowed up by the beast in the sand and everything else in the sandstorm, and it seems like everybody dies except for the boy. And then we switch to this group of people who are tracking and hunting, I think, sand dragons or something similar, sand squids, some type of big monster. And this girl is like the first one who's ever able to do this type of thing, and her brother wants to be part of the clan, and he's got a mentor, and the head hopping makes me not connect with anybody. Like, it was all just information in the dialogue, info dumpy, telling me what happens. I got nothing internal, I got no motivations, I got no connection with the characters whatsoever. I can't even remember them barely. It was a mess. Plus all the stylistic things. So I DNF'd it after 2 chapters. I couldn't even get through chapter 2. I was so upset with all the missed opportunities for something to grab or connect with me. So I DNF'd it after 2 chapters. Alright guys. Well, that is my reading for the month. This is a really long video. I've been talking for a while about books, but I got through 19. So yeah, what were you reading this month? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what your favorite book and your least favorite book was this month. Alright guys, thanks for watching. See you later.